Due to the technical difficulties on that day of the interview, I was unable to record my usual intro, but I have something better in mind. Chris, take it away.
Hey, this is Chris Cox, the voice of Hawkeye,
Garron, Paduk.
and of course,
The Terminator in Mortal Kombat, the video game. But of course you already know this and all this stuff. But anyway, you're watching Jantmore Interviews. Enjoy.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. I can see you too.
Oh, okay. Here, that's Charlie and that's Odie. So maybe this is more fun anyway.
Okay.
You've gone from my booth to my house.
You look great. Okay, so now it's good. That's perfect. Now we're ready to go.
We've already
Oh
had
my
quite a
God.
journey.
It's been a journey to say the least. Well, before I get into the questions, you're not buffering. I can hear you perfectly now. I would just like to say it is a ginormous honor and a humbling experience to be able to speak to you. I'm a huge fan of your work. Your resume is beyond impressive, and I'm so excited to be able to bring you on. So thank you for coming on, and I do hope you enjoy your time here. So thank you so much again.
I will indeed, and you've already endeared yourself by using the word ginormous, which is a favorite in the Chris Cox household. We love ginormous.
Well, before I get into the questions and just all that, just a little icebreaker. You know, I have my questions and things I want to ask you, but in interviews, you never really ask the interviewee, like, what's on their mind? What are they thinking about? What did they do yesterday? How they've been? And so just for the first thing I want to just do is, like, what's on your mind? What have you been thinking about? Is there a show you like? Is there something you want to let the fans know? Is there something you ate that you loved yesterday? You can literally talk about anything at all. The floor is all
Okay.
yours.
So a couple of things. Shows I like, a show that I've become quite enamored of is Succession on HBO. I really like that show. I like just the drama of it and all of that. So that's fun. My daughter has been watching Bob's Burgers nonstop. So I've been checking in on that, and that's very funny. I like that one. Other things on my mind, you know, Halloween right around the corner. Very excited for that. This year, you know, it's going to be kind of the first somewhat return to normalcy out here in LA anyway. We're going to be going to friends of my daughter's and doing trick or treat, kind of, you know, door-to-door thing, like, you know, what they kind of didn't do in the middle of the you know, the real bad part of the pandemic last year. So that's exciting. And then, like I said, I got this guy, you know, he's good. He's all good. He's a year old. So that's it, man. He's like Fozzie Bear, so.
That is so cool. Well, speaking of Halloween, then, like, what's your favorite horror movie, or do you have like a favorite slasher, or what type of horror are you into?
Right. I love horror movies. I'm really old school with my horror movies. I will admit that. The first horror movie I ever saw was Halloween, and I saw it on Halloween in the year, it was 1980. I was, you know, like 8 years old, and it had just debuted on HBO because, you know, it was in the theaters a year or two before, and it scared the water out of me. And I loved it. You know, even at that age, I was like, oh man, this is a cool feeling. You know, so Halloween is a big one. I wasn't as much into Friday the 13th. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And then, you know, movies that are sort of little more like intellectual or ethereal, like Jacob's Ladder. It's sort of like horror, but also just mind-bending, and I love that one too.
No, me and you both. Like, I remember when I watched the Halloween movies, I was like 6 or 7, had no business watching horror movies.
Yeah, exactly.
And I walked in on my mom because she was like doing a binge of them. I think they were doing a marathon because I think it was around the time Halloween was. And she didn't care to turn it off. Like, you know, when your little kid comes in the room, you like turn off the TV, like, oh, let's change the channel or something like that. She didn't care. I was watching the horror of it all, and I was terrified of Michael Myers ever since. Just John Carpenter is a legend in his directing and his scoring. Like, he's so great, and Halloween is another classic, so well done, and it's just,
yeah,
I love those movies. Have you seen the newer ones, or?
Yeah, I saw the Jamie Lee Curtis one from like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember what the title of, you know, the titles
Is this
with
called
the Halloween
Halloween
series. Like, who knows? They keep like Halloween 25 or whatever. I like that one. I mean, the original is always going to be the best. The one that was kind of the most disappointing was the third one. I remember being very excited. The second one was pretty good. So the third one was coming out like maybe 84 or something like that.
Was that the season of the witch?
Yeah, it just went off for me. It just went off the rails.
I hate that one too. Yeah.
I mean, it had nothing to do with the whole story. I was like, what is this? It was really surreal.
I hated that one. Yeah, that was not my favorite. The Rob Zombie ones.
Good.
Oh, I was gonna say the Rob Zombie ones, the reboots he did are actually pretty scary. Like the guy who plays Michael Myers is like 6'8", so you can really imagine he's like this force. He was tall and menacing. But honestly, man, I'm with you right there. Like the John Carpenter one, original, just really can't be beat. I mean, like he was really in his like he really did so well with that.
Yeah, and he was in the zone, and they just shot that up in I think Pasadena or Altadena in just a really kind of suburban street. It was very bland. I don't think many people had many expectations, and then it turned out to be great. And then the last thing I will say about John Carpenter. Two other movies of his, Escape from New York, if anyone hasn't seen that, excellent like dystopian action movie. And then The Thing, his version of The Thing is dope.
Have you seen the reboot of it? I haven't seen the reboot.
No, I should check that out, but there you go.
Yeah, we can literally talk about Halloween movies all the time, because horror is something that I like, not my favorite genre, because like I'm a scaredy baby. Like anything scares me. Like you walk past me and you touch my shoulders without me knowing, and I'll freak out and jump out of my chair. So, but I do have a love for slashers. Friday the 13th, like
I'm
Nightmare
with you.
on Elm Street. The original Nightmare on Elm Street is phenomenal. Love Robert Englund as Freddy, does a great job with that, and just the magic of it all is great.
Absolutely. By the way, I see that Beastmaster Sage has said Hawkeye and Colossus are my favorite roles. I just want to say that I did for Marvel. Those are like, I love those characters. Colossus is a great character, very, very big and intimidating, but also has a heart.
I can't wait to talk about those roles with you.
But anyway, go ahead. I won't bring that stuff up anymore.
Oh no! Please do. Like I'm just like I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. You've been a major part of my childhood. I grew up with your Hawkeye. Like for me, like your Hawkeye is the definitive Hawkeye, and I know Troy Baker has done him a lot, but for me, you are Hawkeye. Like genuinely, the entire cast of Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes are the definitive characters for me, and that's always going to be the case no matter what iteration. You're my Hawkeye. Fred Tatasciore will always be my Hulk. Rick Wasserman will always be my Thor. Like you guys just really mean so much. Yeah.
I know all those people you just mentioned.
Well, I spoke to Rick actually a couple months ago, and he just talked about working with people like you and how much he had so much fun with you guys. And I really can't wait to talk more about that environment, because that must have been so much fun to work with all those people. Yeah.
For sure.
Some things that I found out while researching you, because I am Mr. Journalist, so I have to do my research.
Did you Google me?
But a cool thing about you, since I'm a massive Transformers fan, I noticed that you did a voice for Transformers The Last Night, but you weren't credited for that.
Yeah. I here's the thing. One of the downsides to me is that I'm a bit of a distracto mentally. So I have a storehouse of information. So sometimes I don't recall some of these things. I don't really remember what I did for that. But it's not unusual that I would do something. It may have just been sort of a minor thing, and that it didn't get credit. I mean, that's not uncommon in the voiceover world, as you probably discovered from other actors. You can do various things, and suddenly someone will bring it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, wow, that was a weird thing. I remember that, but yeah, I don't know why they didn't credit me. Sometimes I just I wonder, and if I go see the movie, and if I do see my name, I think like in what was the last Pixar movie that I was in, help me. I'm really bad at this. I shouldn't be, but I am.
Oh no, you've done a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it was the one with all the, the like trolls and ghouls and, horrible. Anyway,
Was it Trolls, the movie?
No, I was in Trolls. I was in Trolls. Yeah, but that wasn't Pixar. That was Universal. And that one I absolutely remember that, and that was great. I worked with Bob Bergen was in that room. Who else? I think Debbie Derryberry and some other classics. And yeah, we provided all the like little animal sounds. I think I did some like weird caterpillar noises in that, and that was really fun. And that movie turned out excellent, I thought.
Did you meet Justin Timberlake?
No, I didn't. I did not meet, although I've played Justin Timberlake in Family Guy.
I'm not surprised. You're, for fans who might not also know this, you're a utility voice for Family Guy. You've done tons of voices. You've been in like over 100 episodes with Seth MacFarlane and the gang.
Something like that. I was there
so
from I was there from the beginning, really. They had a weird bifurcated first season. They did like a truncated thing. I think Fox was just kind of like, okay, let's see how this does. And so they only maybe did 10 episodes, and I wasn't in that first thing. But then the very next set of episodes, they called me in, and from there on, Seth liked me, and if Seth liked you, he brought you back time and again. So that was a great, but even then I didn't know that it was going to do what it did. I mean, geez, I was like, wow.
This show's been going on for forever, man. Like, it's 2021 and this show is still pumping out episodes. It's really crazy to see something like that. Like, if I ever get a chance to speak to Seth, I just ask, like, what is it like seeing a series? Or I could even ask you, what is it like to see a series that you've been on, just doing, minimal voices here and there, grow to like a massive franchise on primetime TV?
Right. Well, I will tell you a story about that one that I think it's kind of this interesting look at what happened. So I was doing Medal of Honor Pacific Assault in 2004. We were recording down in Santa Monica. I walked in the studio, and this is after Family Guy had just been canceled. Maybe it had been canceled 6 months before, maybe a year, something like that. But it was off the air. The engineer was watching a DVD of the show. He had bought, a season on the show. And, because the show was canceled, I thought, well, it's just one of those shows that comes and goes. But the way he had his reverence, I walked in and I was like, oh, I said Family Guy. I go, man, I used to do that before it got canceled. He goes, I love this show. And I sat there and we watched before we started recording. I watched a couple minutes and I just had this weird feeling. I was like, wow, something's happening here. Like, they always say on a movie set, if you're making the below the line, and it's not a disparaging comment, there's above the line people, the director, the producer, but the below the line, they're like the regular people. And the same thing in the audio world. I mean, these guys are amazing, these engineers, but they're more reflective of like real people, not just weirdo actors. So when that guy had the DVDs, I was like, wow, what's happening? And then the next thing I know, American Dad was coming up, and Seth had auditions for it, and he called me in to audition. Didn't get the part, but nonetheless, I walked in the door, and Family Guy. I'd read in like the week before. I was like, wait, they're bringing Family Guy back because of all the DVD sales. So that guy that was watching in the Medal of Honor, he was onto something. And I walked in the door for American Dad audition, and I was just like, wow, you must be floating on cloud nine. And he had this big smile because now, imagine it. Now he had two shows, you see, because when they canceled Family Guy, Fox was like, well, we like you. We want to do something else. So, Odie, quit photobombing me. So they did American Dad. They said, oh, we'll do American Dad with you. And then in the meantime, these DVDs went through the roof, and they said, wow, I think what, Seth, we have to uncancel your show. It's never happened. I mean, it's rare. It's so rare that a show gets canceled and brought back. It's just the inertia alone to overcome a cancellation. So that was incredible. And then I did, a majority of my episodes were in that second run after, 2005 all the way up till now, because that's 15, 16 years, worth of shows. So, yeah.
Are you still doing voices for right now, like recording and stuff?
Yeah, I am. They bring me in from time to time. During the pandemic, it was a little different. It was a little strange, everything kind of stopped. And that was actually one of the first shows where I went back into the studio, and it was surreal because I drove up to the parking lot. Someone came out, not in a hazmat suit, but they came out like, you know, they had like gloves and they had a clipboard. And then it's for me to sign in, which you always have to sign in list, this SAG list or whatever. And then, okay, that pin goes away. They walked me from this outdoor entrance rather than coming in through the lobby. And it was just so weird. I walked in and there's just a microphone. And then one guy comes in, the engineer, he comes in, he just very briefly does something. He may have already set it up so I didn't have to even act with him. And then they directed me over the monitors, they weren't even there, the directors and producers. And so that was really surreal. It was a dystopian experience, I thought, wow, this situation is strange.
I know a lot of voice actors had to adjust to the pandemic. I know voice actors had to get booths because a lot of voice actors weren't doing it from their booth full time. I know that you guys have to start auditioning through the booth, right? Like you guys do auditions in your recording booth.
Yeah, I was lucky, in the sense that years ago, I just realized, what? Well, first of all, if you want to avoid traffic in LA, which who doesn't?
I'm sorry to cut you off, but yes, that is the number one thing voice actors talk to me about. They're like, this traffic is disgusting. I hate it.
It's awful. It's awful. So, I mean, a very brief story. The legendary trailer voiceover guy, Don LaFontaine. Before I became a voice actor, I worked in the trailer business as an editor and, as a runner. That was kind of where I got my start. And it was just to sort of pay the bills. But Don would not accept, this is back in the 90s, he would not take a job that was outside of a 5-mile radius because he would lose money if he did. Because all the trailer houses were they were probably within a 2-mile radius, to be honest. And he had a limo driver and he would get taken around. I mean, this guy was living the life. And he would get taken around and he would just come in and he was such a pro. I mean, he came in and knocked it out in one take. You didn't even have to give him direction. He just knew, in a world, one man, one woman, together again, rated R. He would do that and then he would go, where's the check? So I got a booth. So it's the same thing. I got a booth many years ago because I was just sick of driving around. And, I got it off Craigslist, but it was a really professional booth and I installed it. And I actually just sold that booth to a fellow voice actor friend of mine, Eric Lopez. I hope I'm not, is that like, am I selling him out by telling that I sold him a booth? I don't think so. But I sold him a booth, which, I gave him the friend discount, but, and then I bought, this booth called the Studio Bricks booth, which you may have talked to some people who have that. And it's just an upgrade because I'd had this other one for 13 years and it was kind of a little bit, I was just ready to move on. And also I like toys and gear. So. Yeah,
no, absolutely. What was one? Rick Wasserman, who you said, has a whole booth, set up, like he sells booths to voice actors all the time. What was it called? It's called the Whisper. No, it's not called the Whisper Room. It's something, but that's another version. There are so many versions of.
Yeah, I've been to Rick's and I've seen his setup. I don't know. It was years ago, so I don't know if he changed it. But that's another guy. I mean, Rick was the voice of AMC. If you ever heard the commercial, was like, next on, I just do all this when Madman. I loved hearing him go, Madman.
No, listen, because when we did the interview at the end, he was talking about his time doing the promos, and when he did that voice, I was like a kid in the candy store, just listening to the power of his voice. That is such a cool job, and just, oh goodness, that's so cool.
You said that, first of all, thank you again, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That experience, but Rick standing, I actually stood next to him. We have an array of microphones. There was, I guess, 6 or 7 of us always in the booth recording together, which was amazing. That doesn't always happen. And Rick was positioned next to me. And so we just had the best time. We would goof around in between takes, and he was just such a warm and friendly dude. So I loved working with Rick. Yeah.
That cast is phenomenal. Like I said, I really love Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and for it, it's still, I wish they didn't cancel that show. And just hearing Christopher York, the guy who's the main writer, talk about all the ideas that he had plans for up to 5 seasons, and you guys only did 2. Like, he wanted to bring in the X-Men, he wanted to have more arcs, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I know that there's Avengers Assemble. Just seeing how you guys got like Can, and then they do Avengers Assemble, which, even though Avengers Assemble is cool, and you were Star-Lord on that show for a brief episode.
They brought me in. They brought in. I think that was a confusing time in the journey, because if you think about it, because what they were doing, I believe, I mean, I don't think I'm talking out of school here, but they had the film franchise, which kind of, you see, we kind of straddled. We came in right after maybe the first Iron Man, I want to say, and then like the other iterations started happening. They were doing the Avengers, the theatrical, and I think, and then the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think there was just sort of this general thing of where, we were guarding the comic book. We were staying true to that, and I don't know if they just kind of wanted to tie more into the feature films, because that's what it seemed like. But you brought up Chris. I mean, when I would get a script in that show, they were. I mean, first of all, the writing on that show was impeccable. I've done, and I'm a writer also. I've sold like pilots and stuff. And so I'm the written word is extremely important to me, because as an actor, you really only as good as the writing. You bring your own thing to the table, but when that writing meets with the acting, it's beautiful. And he used to just turn, when I got a script of his, sometimes I wouldn't even look at the name, because I'd be curious. And then his were just, and he started changing the writing in the best way. He was writing to us. He told me, he's like, I'm adjusting Hawkeye to your voice. So it's this kind of mesh of what he had envisioned as the comic book version, and then my natural, whatever I was bringing. And it was beautiful, because midway through maybe the first season, when the script started really gelling even more, I could feel it. And that's probably what the audience and the fans were feeling, was my, Chris's and my convergence, and my camaraderie with the other characters, like the whole, banter between me and Fred as Hulk. And Fred and I were already, we were kind of buddies, and we became buddies. I think maybe on that show, we knew each other a little before that. And so that, also helped. The chemistry we already had was, amazing,
I love ensemble records, and I wish voice actors were given more opportunities to do it. But of course, with the pandemic, and of course, actors' schedules conflicting a lot with other things, because they have tons of other projects, it's kind of hard and difficult to do that. And I just wish you guys were more able to do it, like with video games. I thought you guys always recorded in the same room, but I've been informed that with video games, it's always just by yourself. You're with the director, with the engineers and stuff. You guys don't mix and match with one another, which
I'll give you a couple examples. You're absolutely right, but I have a few exceptions to that, and I will just say that those exceptions, as much as I've loved recording solo, the exceptions where I got to work in tandem were excellent. One, I just brought up one a minute ago when I was telling the Family Guy story. Medal of Honor Pacific Assault, we actually recorded that as a platoon, as a unit. So, I was the medic, and then we had a gunnery sergeant, and we had a private, and we were about 5 or 6 of us, and it was amazing. And we gelled, and we would go to lunch together, and it was sort of weird. We kind of fell into the protocol of the guy that was playing the sergeant. He was like, "Hey, Sarge, where do you want to get a sandwich?" And then the other one was Skylanders, where I was Glumshanks to Richard Horvitz' Chaos. We would be brought in probably a handful of times, because it was such a back and forth energy, it was like Dracula and Igor, so so that really worked for those characters. That really brought both of them to life, because we could play off each other and we'd come up with things where maybe there's little improv moments, and yeah, so it is better to work if you can with another actor.
Another cool thing that I found out about you, oh, and to go back to the Transformers thing, we've been all over the place. I love it, though. I love it. Was that you were, in the last night, you did the voice of a knight. So, yeah, it was very minimal because it was a knight, and the knights weren't really prevalent in that movie. I have my opinions on that movie, but do you remember working with Michael Bay or meeting him at all? Or?
No, I don't think that I did work with him for that. I mean, I know people that were more prominently featured that worked with him. A friend of mine, John DeCrosta, played one of the, the little.
Oh,
robot.
he played. I know exactly what you're talking about. He played like this Dr. Crab type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about working with Michael, and and that's always a fun thing when you do get a chance to work with the directors. I worked with Damien on First Man, the director of La La Land and First Man, and and that was an interesting one. I play, if you watch the movie, it's the one about Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong makes a phone call to his brother-in-law because Neil Armstrong, spoiler alert, here's your chance, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cover your ears. His daughter is suffering from cancer, and so he calls his brother-in-law to kind of find out about treatments, and that's me. And I never met Ryan Gosling, who played Neil Armstrong. I watched him, and Damon would give me, direction. But I can say that I did a scene with, Ryan Gosling. I'm on the other line. Did you hear me? But that's surreal. That's a weird thing about voiceover. You can end up acting with people that are like big celebrities you never meet.
Yeah. Another cool thing I found out about you is that you almost got arrested. You shot a rap video about George W. Bush that almost landed you in federal custody. Go more into that, because I'm very interested by that story, because that
okay, so how did you find that? Did I say, maybe I mentioned that somewhere, but that's pretty obscure. But yes, that is true. In 2006, I had decided to do this. I do impressions, and I've always done all the presidents. And so I decided to do this rap video about George Bush, and I flew to Washington, D.C., where a friend of mine, whose father was very wealthy, and he had a Bentley limo that, I kid you not, may have been nicer than the presidential limo. I knew it was crazy. It was so nice. And he had like 5 different like Rolls Royces and all this stuff. So we went, yeah, it was crazy. So, and here, you call it production value is what you call that. I didn't have to pay. I got like the presidential limo without paying a dime. So anyway, what we did was I have this line where I say, Iraq wasn't my fault. The intelligence was cruddy or whatever. And I'm standing in front of the George H.W. Bush CIA highway sign, because George W. Bush's father, before he was president in like the late 70s or something, he was the director of the CIA. So it was an honorary, they kind of named it after him. So the whole point was I was going to do this shot, and it was just the highway sign. I wasn't standing at the gates of the CIA. I'm not that dumb. So, and it was a skeleton crew, as they say. It was a sound guy and a cameraman. And we weren't even rolling sound because I was lip syncing, so it didn't matter. We were lip syncing to the song, which I had already done. So we get out of the car, and I knew we were going to have to do it quick. We step out of the car, I jump in front of this sign, and we just did a take real quick. And I'm telling you, within 60 seconds of us doing that take, I saw 6 patrol cars coming in the opposite direction. We were on like the eastbound, lane or whatever, and they were coming. There was a median, and they were driving on the other lane, and they U-turned around and pulled up, and they jumped out, and they had military grade assault rifles.
What the?
And they were walking to us, and it's funny. I get nervous, but I don't necessarily get like scared in those moments. So the guy's walking up, and these guys clearly, I think they came back from Iraq, and they probably, that's the thing they did. They just went right into the CIA. They just felt like young guys who had just been overseas. There was just a military aspect to them. And the way they were holding the guns was, I was like, oh, they know how to do that. And so they walk over, and the one guy, he was like the front of it, he had the Oakleys on, you know, and he was kind of holding the gun a little bit cocked up. It wasn't pointing at us, but it was just angled, you know, instead of being down, it was like this. And one of the first thing I said to him was, could you not point the gun like that high? And this guy, you know, this guy's face, you know, he had been pretty stern, and he just went, he smiled, you know. I think he thought that was pretty funny. And then they asked us what the heck we were doing, because this is only 5 years after 9/11, not even 4.5 years. So I think they were like, wait a minute, there's a weird camera crew. I mean, at that point, everybody was on pins and needles. They're like, what is going on? And then they come up, because they had probably seen it. Either someone called, or they had, more likely, they have surveillance cameras with everywhere around there that even shoot across the highway. So they took us, there were 4 of us, and they separately interviewed us to make sure that our stories gelled. And our story was, the way we were shooting all over DC, and we got access everywhere, was that we were doing like a college. I mean, I was in my 30s. I don't know. It was ridiculous. We said like, yeah, you know, going back to get my graduate degree. It was such a cockamamie story, but we all were on the same page. So we said, yeah, this is just a funny video. It's like, you know, it's for us and this, whatever it was. And they let us go. But I will quickly tell you, we then had another thing we were going to shoot on the Exorcist stairs, like these stairs, another favorite horror movie. And when we went there, a man came over. I was all the way at the top of the stairs. Cameraman was at the bottom. And I saw this man come over in like a tan jacket. And I'm like, what is that guy doing? He leans over to my friend, whose dad was the rich guy. He was sort of our producer and going with this. And he said something, and then he walked away. So we shot it. Well, no, while we were there, my friend goes, you know, he goes, oh, you know, the guy goes, what are you doing? And my friend leans over, he goes, oh, just watch this. And then, you know, I said, they rolled the camera, and I go, I'm George Bush, and these are the Exorcist stairs. It's ridiculous. It's just a. So anyway, I came back down, and my friend goes, do you know who that guy was? And I was like, no. He goes, that was a CIA agent. They had followed us. And the guy, the way he let him know was he opened his jacket just a little bit and showed my friend the logo. And my friend goes, I bet you can't get that in the gift shop. And the guy goes, yeah, no, you can't. So I almost got arrested by CIA federal-based or federal agents, and we had a CIA guy track us. So that's my claim to fame. I'm not just a voiceover guy, man. I'm an international spy.
Maybe you should have been Black Widow instead of Hawkeye.
That would have been awesome. By the way, that movie was awesome. I like that movie.
Oh, yeah, okay, cool. Well, one of my questions was going to ask, since you have been the Marvel roles, do you keep up with the movies or the TV shows and stuff like that?
I do. I have not. It's to my everlasting shame that I have not yet. My daughter has watched WandaVision, and that's really my goal before the year's out. I have to watch this. I mean, I can't believe I haven't. But I mean, obviously, I've seen all the Avengers films, and I've seen the Captain America films and the Thor films. I mean, Ragnarok still stands out as, you know, one of my favorites. I think even one of the reasons is because, you know, Jeff Goldblum was in Ragnarok. Jeff Goldblum. One of my impressions. Thor. Am I Thor? I certainly am. I hurt my shoulder. You see,
That is so cool that you could do that. I can't do that in my life. That's so cool. People do impressions. I envy them because it's like I can't even. Maybe one day if I practice on it hard, but that's just like so cool to see people just change from the voice to being like you're talking and then you just change to Frank Welker or you change to Samuel Jackson or something like that. Like you just like that's just so cool to me. I was watching a video where someone did an impression of Peter Cullen's voice. And it sounded like I couldn't tell the difference. Like, that's so cool.
Right, yeah. I will tell you, Frank Welker, man, I have like I've worked with him, but not in the same room. And the one chance that I would have had was on Curious George. I was playing a cockatoo. I was playing a bird, you know, and the bird was actually, you know, he was a mimic. So I was mimicking Frank's Curious George, which was a really weird, surreal thing. So I'm sitting there going, you know, as the bird doing Curious George. But I was late for the session, traffic, and he had just left. So I didn't get to, you know, I've met him, but I would have loved to have actually recorded with him on that one.
Oh, dang. I don't know how I feel after that. I'd be like, damn it, I just missed him, you know?
I was like, man, I was so bummed, you know? But he's a really nice guy. And one time my parents, they lived in Tucson for a while. They were playing golf, and they were playing golf with some guy, and the guy's like, hey, what is, you know, your son, they had mentioned I live in LA. They go, what does he do? And my parents said voiceover. And he goes, oh, my brother does voiceover. He's pretty big or whatever. But they didn't get his name. But they told me, and I go, I bet it was Frank Welker. Years later, I met Frank, and it was indeed him. You know, he said, oh yeah, my brother lived in Tucson. And I was like, my parents played golf with your brother.
That is so cool. Oh my God. It's so crazy how you meet people that you don't even know, or like you just randomly run into somebody. It's crazy how life works that way. You know, since you know, I like to know more about the people I talk to, and we've gotten a good sense of one another, which is great. I love it. But what is one word you would use to describe your childhood?
One word I just used to describe my childhood. Gosh, that's a tough one. That's very, it's like very straightforward and simple, and yet very deep. I would say, you know, I mean, the first word that comes to my mind is fun. You know, that first and foremost, it was fun. You know, I grew up in Indiana for the first 8 years of my life, and then moved to Texas for the next 8 years, and then came back and went up to Cincinnati. But the Indiana years were particularly fun because, you know, it was a small town, and, you know, had my group of friends, and we just play all day. We just go outside, which I don't know if that happens anymore. People stay inside a lot and look at these devices, but yeah, fun.
Since I lived in New York, I grew up in New York. I live in Georgia now. Two very different experiences, but I used to play a lot with my friends, go out in the yard. A funny story, I think I only told this once, is I was playing with my friend outside once, and he had Hot Wheels. You know how like Hot Wheels has like tracks? If you have a set, you have like tracks, you could like roll the cars down. So we were playing around, right? I think he had like a Ben 10 watch or something. And I think I like hit him, but not on purpose. I think it was by accident or something. He grabs a Hot Wheels track and goes whack, and he slaps my arm.
Oh,
hard as
that's like a belt, man. Oh my God, that's horrible.
With a Hot Wheels track, but I got him back because he had a Soundwave toy from Transformers and Cybertron series. I grabbed it and I broke it in half and I threw it away.
That's hilarious.
I had to buy him a new Soundwave action. Did I? No, I don't think I had to buy him a new one. No, I didn't. But I did break his toy in half, and we. I haven't seen that guy in a while though. But
that's funny.
Since you've been in this industry, you know, there's always a story to how people get started. So, was acting always the plan for you, or did it come later in your life?
Well, from a very early age, I was doing voices. I mean, my parents told me when I was 4, I was imitating our next door neighbor who was from Mississippi. He had a very deep Southern accent, and I guess I sort of was imitating it to the point where they were like worried because they, you know, a 4-year-old could just go and, you know, say something, and they were worried that he would hear me doing that and be like, you know, what's wrong with your boy? You know, why is he imitating me? You know, so from a very early age, I was doing voices. I was a huge fan of Saturday Night Live. I mean, Eddie Murphy kind of opened my entire comedic perspective. I just was like, oh, this is something that I would want to do, you know? So yeah, I think it was there, but it was also because I wasn't, you know, in Los Angeles or New York. It didn't necessarily seem like a real possibility. You know, and then when I got in college, I started doing my own thing, making videos, being in them, and I started thinking, oh, you know, I think there's something here. I think I might be able to do something like this. And yeah, I just, you know, then I came out to LA, and I mean, to be honest, Family Guy, why did I say Family Guy? Family Guy, put the emphasis on the second syllable. I was going back to my Spanish speaking days, Espanol. But it was my first real voiceover gig. And I was, you know, it was at a time when it was not as competitive. There weren't as many people. So I parlayed that right into a voiceover career because, you know, it was a big deal that I had gotten on it. And then that opened up doors. So that really obviously cemented it. But yeah, you know, acting was always part of my plan, and writing, you know. Yeah.
I love writing now more than ever because since I just recently graduated from high school, and you're always like forced to write an essay about blah 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 and this and third. But recently I've just come like to terms about I love writing. Like I'm recently writing a short film and just really getting back into my writing roots because writing is just so much fun. And I think one of my friends said it, like writing is the perfect form of expression. Like I love writing and being able to get your thoughts onto the paper, or being able to put your emotions in a character and just building off of that. And I just love it so much, and I've come to appreciate it more as I've gotten older now than say when I was little, where I write all crazy all over the place. But I love writing so much, and yeah, I love
finding you're finding your voice is what it sounds like, and when you find your voice, you know, you start to kind of expand your perspective, and that really helps, you know, your writing. So cool. I love to hear that, man. I love to hear that. I love to hear people, new writers coming into the world is always a good thing.
Have you ever thought about writing a book, or have you written a book before?
You know, I never have thought about writing a book. I've written, you know, you know, like I said, pilots and a screenplay, and, you know, little and short, you know, stuff, you know, but I've never thought of writing a book. That would be interesting.
I can see it. I mean, that whole story about almost getting arrested sounds amazing. And I got
yeah, maybe I should build on that and make a whole, you know, character. It could be like a fun, like spy thriller novel where a guy disguised as a president, you know, goes around and gets into trouble, and it reverberates around the world. Although I think stuff like that's kind of starting to be a weird reality with this face swap stuff, because sometimes people put the faces on and you're like, wait, is that really Will Smith or is that Jay Farrow? What's going on? You know?
That's funny that you say that. I saw a video where someone had a filter of Tom Cruise and put it on their face, and it looked literally just like them. Like, I think there was like a thing missing or something, but he literally looked just like Tom Cruise, but it was a completely different person. And when I think about that, I don't like that's so scary to me. Like, I don't know if you've watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but there's a face technology where they could put it on their face and it looked exactly like that person. They were able to disguise themselves and go and infiltrate. And I just think about like what that could do, like for propagandists or just people just put some. That is so scary. I mean,
it could be absolutely. I mean, and don't, you know, look, you know, somebody like Vladimir Putin, for instance, who's got access to the, you know, all these technologically, you know, talented young people who are just looking for a gig many times. You know, he hires them to do things. He could hire them to, you know, have, you know, our president or senator on video saying something like, you know, crazy, you know, like, you know, the United States is, you know, about to attack, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, that's not really him. We're not doing that. You know?
Let's not talk about that, because I've got nightmares about that.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing to think about. So about voice acting, you know, how was voice acting introduced into your life? Were you doing like theaters and plays before, or was voice acting always something that you were like, I want that?
So it's funny. I did a voiceover reel in college, which I still have. And it's weird. I look back on that and I'm telling you, I don't know even, I guess I kind of knew that voiceover was the thing, but then when I came out here and I was in voiceover, I was like, oh, this is, I didn't really know it was like this, but I just kind of generally had a sense that my voices could amount to something. So when I was in college, I thought, well, if I am going to do anything with this skill, because I could do the impressions, I thought I should get it down on tape. You know, I had done a lot of, I think really what sparked it when I think about it was I did a lot of radio stuff when I was a teenager. And by that, I mean, I kind of honed my chops, if you will, by calling into radio stations, starting in when I moved to Cincinnati at 16. And I would always get on, you know, and they would take calls all morning for their shows, and it didn't necessarily mean you were going to get on. But the reason I got on was I would use my writing, and I would write these little mini sketches. I would call in and get through, and then I would do them. You know, I remember one thing I did was I did a Casey Kasem impression, and it was, I was calling in to dedicate the song "I Am an Innocent Man" by Billy Joel to in honor of Charlie Hustle, otherwise known as Pete Rose, because at the time Pete Rose was embroiled in a scandal where they thought he had bet on his own team, and so it was just this goofy thing. But because I called in as Casey Kasem, and then so what they did was they would take my bits, and literally within 10 minutes of when I would call, because there was a delay or something, they would take the calls off air because they knew, you know, sometimes some Yahoo might call in and say some bad stuff. So they'd take my call, and then I would think, I wonder if they're going to air it. And I would listen, and within 10 minutes, they had produced a segment. So that little call, they like faded in the Billy Joel song with I said, will you dedicate this to Charlie Hustle? I Am an Innocent Man by Billy Joel. And then they would fade it up, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm like writing material for them. And so after like the fourth time that I got on, they took me as they put me on hold, and they go, you know, off air during a commercial, they go, hey man, who are you? You know, they're like, you know, because I was doing more than they were doing in terms of impressions and stuff. And I told them who I was. They go, well, we got to give you something. So they sent me a bunch of swag. They sent me like shoes and T-shirts and all this stuff. And I think that really kind of solidified my notion that, oh, my voice is a gift. And if I can use it, then I should. And then, like I said, I did a reel in college. And when I came out here, I did that Family Guy thing. And the first thing, or actually, I did put together a more professional demo reel once I moved out. But when I got that Family Guy gig and I got my first voiceover agent, the first thing he told me in our meeting, where it was like they were going to decide whether to take me, he goes, well, you're definitely, your voice is, and you're really good. He goes, but your demo is terrible. And I just kind of went stone faced. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, yeah, you've got to do a new demo. I said, well, sure. Let's tell me where to go. And then they sent me to do a new demo, and then that got me work. Sure enough, you know.
That is so cool.
Your demo is terrible. I was like, ouch.
That kind of stings, you know.
Yeah, I was like, hey man, I paid money for that. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
you know, it wasn't a ton of. I went to like probably the third tier voiceover demo place.
Yeah, because that's one thing I noted, though. Realize that you pay for demos sometimes be made for you by certain people and stuff, which is really cool. Honestly, it's how that works, because I know there's a lot of time that goes into demos and techniques that goes into demos, like putting your best work first to make sure they hear it first, because, you know, they're listening to tons of people every day, so you want to get their attention right off the bat.
Well, that's why I did, you know, I was insistent, and I'm not saying I was the first one to do this, but a lot of people just had their audio demos, but I was like, look, my demo, my animation demo now, I want to show visually the work that I've done, so you really connect how my voice was able to inform the character, you know, visually. And so that's why on my demo, which is on YouTube under Chris Cox Facts username, that's why I did that, because I really wanted people to hear and see the end product, so they could really put together, oh wow, you know, he recorded these voices, and then they came together so beautifully, you know. And I used a lot of the one of my favorite clips in that is I play the serpent, like the serpent character for, I think it was for Guardians. I think it might have been for Guardians, or maybe it was for Avengers.
No, it was Avengers. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. The Rattler, right?
Yes, Rattler. Yes, Rattler.
That's Mightiest. Yeah.
I love that character, but it was a kind of a minor thing. But sometimes people only have their major roles. I was like, no, this is a great example of how I can do a lower voice and gravelly. And so I threw that in there, and that's a great example of how to sort of make a demo, maybe a little more eclectic or whatever. It shows different, various things you've done that aren't always the big headline stuff. So.
Yeah, I genuinely really love that character. I was like, this is Chris? I didn't, hold on. That was a really good idea on your part. That's really cool. I didn't notice. I was like,
yeah,
this is really him? That's awesome.
I don't want to sound immodest, but I'm very honest about this. I really am. I mean, I know my voice, so I know, when I can hear me and everything, but there are times, very few. And on that one, when I heard it, I was like, did they change me? I was like, but I knew I did it, and I just hit a certain place that I hadn't hit before. Just all of it came together, and that's why I put it on there. I was like, wow, to show people that there was a range. And so I'm glad that, that kind of fooled you maybe a little bit.
You did a perfect job. Coming into voice acting, do you have any voice acting inspirations, or were you just inspired by cartoons and movies, or did you have a set person that was like, oh, I want to meet him or be like him?
So I can tell you cartoon-wise, Scooby-Doo, which is funny because later in life, that was when I was a really little kid, but later in life, when I was a teenager, I started developing a Casey Kasem impression. He was Shaggy, Zoink Scoops, okay, I didn't know at the time when I was watching it, but I liked those voices, and I I would always do that, but I also like Dawes Butler stuff. He was just a Murgatroyd, exit stage left even. I loved that guy and everything he did. So that was also an inspiration. But yeah, I loved Justice League. Meanwhile, back at the halls of justice, I loved that. Every time that transition of going to the Hall of Justice and that visual, that old school animation, and hearing that voice, I just got psyched up. I'm like, yeah, let's go in there. Let's get in there.
Absolutely. I love those older cartoons. And I know animation has changed and story has gotten better, but I really love going back to those classics, the classic Justice League or the 1960s Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. I love that stuff. Whoever did that was really in there. Oh, they killed that. Or watching Super Friends. I love Super Friends. I love Super Friends. That's another great one. Just love all those classic animations that make, or classic Looney Tunes, or just Flintstones. I love all that stuff. I really could go on forever talking about the Flintstones. I'm glad you mentioned that. Totally a favorite. And I was more of a Flintstones than a Jetsons guy. Really?
They were kind of in the same. I was around the same time. Yeah, I was more of a Flintstones guy. I think just because I just love the dynamic. The big guy and the little guy, and Bonnie. Hey, Fred. I also really loved the live action stuff. Hulk. The Hulk. The Bill Bixby was. I didn't miss one. I watched it. I watched every one of those. There was two very obscure Marvel television shows in the late 70s. This always had a little bit of a disco vibe. You'd hear the soundtrack in the background, waka waka waka. There was a Spider-Man show, probably lasted I don't know, maybe 6 episodes, but I was on that. And then there was a Captain America one. This blonde guy, don't even know his name, but I was I loved it. I was that was my my genre, my milieu. And so I've been very lucky to years later be able to play so many. I've played a lot of the, even though it's not necessarily always on Marvel shows, I've played some of the characters in parody versions. Like when I did the Mad cartoon series, I played Captain America. I think I maybe played Superman. I got to play all these characters because it was, they were joking around. It was for humor's sake, but.
You also no, but yeah, also like you played Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Iceman for the Avengers video game. You did
Yep.
Captain America and Ultimate Spider-Man. What else I'm trying to think? I did my research.
You definitely did, man. You definitely did. No joke.
Star-Lord, of course, you played in multiple video games. You did him for Hulk Agents of Smash, Avengers Assemble 2.
Yep.
I'm trying to think who else. For DC, you played Commissioner Gordon, Deadshot, of course, in the Batman games.
Scarecrow.
Batman Hush. Yep. Batman Hush.
I loved the forget about the performance or whatever. I loved that whole section. The animation, the way I remember that was directed by Wes Gleason, and they allowed me, maybe when I was coming back to do some looping, which is where you come back and you correct some of the lines and all that. They allowed me to see, I got to see the artwork, and I was like, oh man, this is really cool. And I love the line when you're like, have a face full of fear and throw it in Nightwing's face. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I always love and I always appreciate everybody that works on the production, from the sound engineers, like I say, all the way to the animators. And so I get excited as a fan when I see that end product, and I'm like, man, I did my thing, they did their thing, it all came together. And what other things did I do that you've studied more than me?
You really want to be here forever?
Not necessarily, but
No, like you've been in Open Season 3.
Gears of War. I was in Gears of War. I played
Garrett Paduk. I have to talk about that role. I love that role so much. Such a cool role in Gears of War.
That's one of my top. For me, that's one of my top 3 for sure. I love that Garrett Paduk. I just love the man. He's crusty. I love like the crusty guy. The like, oh, you think it's going to be easy? You'll see. Whatever.
That's one of my favorites of yours. Besides Hawkeye, I think Garron is like another one that I put there on the top of my list for you. And I mean, Mad TV, of course, you've been multiple characters on that show. I remember watching that actually, and that's why I say you've been a major part of my childhood, because I used to watch that show every night before I went to bed. Watch that, go to bed, go to school in the morning, watch it, rinse, wash, and repeat, like every time the show was on.
That show was so cool for me because we talked earlier about SNL and how Eddie Murphy and the sketch world was really important to me as a kid, and I always sort of had leaned into the sketch comedy. That's what Mad TV was. It was an animated sketch comedy show, and even though it was for kids, they pushed the line. Kevin Shinnick, who was the writer producer, he always went up to the line, which is great because that's what the magazine always did. It was for kids, but then they always got very edgy, and especially the original version. So one of my favorite bits on that, which is on my reel, was they did, and now it's time for another edition of Is Kristen Stewart Sleeping? And then and there's a phone, and it's just so random to call up, like, bring, hello, Kristen Stewart? Yes. Are you sleeping? No. Bring. It was so absurd, and that's a more advanced kind of comedy, and so we did that all the time. And I got and because of the way that he was such a fan and Matt in general of superhero stuff, that's why I got to end up playing like Captain America, like I said, Superman, and whoever else, was because Kevin was such a fan, and he actually writes, like he's done some of the Marvel shows. I wrote one of the Spider-Man episodes was it Ultimate Spider-Man?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one he wrote.
Yeah, I wrote the Craven episode.
Wow, I did not.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, right? Like, where did that come from? Yeah, I did. I wrote that. He invited me on to write, and I wrote that episode, and that was really fun. Yeah, that was awesome.
Cool. Oh yeah, my gosh. Ultimate Spider-Man. That's another one. That's so cool that you got to be involved more than just the actor. You're able to put your pen in paper with that.
I will just tell you, like, I remember I would go down to the local coffee shop to write, and because it was a different kind of writing. I've done like comedy, sitcom stuff. You know, I was doing with Miles and writing all of these interactions, and then all of the action stuff. Like writing the action was like awesome because you're seeing it in your head. You know, it's like, you know, thwip Spider-Man. Like that was the word I learned for like when he's, you know, throwing out a web. It's thwip, and so you'd write that in the script, and I was like, that's really fun. You know. You know, you would write.
Get to meet Stan Lee.
I never got to meet Stan Lee, Spider fans. Yeah, no, I never did. I wish I would have. But me and Eric, actually, Eric Lopez, who I mentioned earlier, we have a bit where we just talk about anything in the world. You're driving along. It's like, look, there's a lamppost. We'll call it Lamppost Man. Because, you know, he was so... I mean, he was prolific. I mean, he never did anything that ridiculous. He was so amazing at taking all of these different things and coming up with full characters, but we just always would just add man to the end of
That might be that
he's
sketch
an
on
Instagram influencer, IG influencer man.
that
or
reminds me of
woman.
the sketch they did with Cam Peel on Comedy Central. They did something like that. I remember that. But
Yeah.
as someone who's been in the voice acting industry for as long as you have been, how would you say you've personally grown as a VA?
I mean, there's the obvious one, which is I'm just confident and comfortable. I know exactly what I'm doing. I got that kind of early, I will say, probably because I'd been goofing around with voices my whole life. So that it was just now all of a sudden there was a microphone in front of me. But, you know, those first few years, you're just sort of testing things out. You're getting comfortable. You're kind of like any job, even though you may have qualifications, you're kind of pretending for a while. You're like, I wonder if they're going to catch me and know that I'm not, you know, I don't always know exactly what I'm doing. It's fake it till you make it. So I would say, you know, I don't have that anymore. I'm just confident. I've always been someone who listens really well to I respect the directors. So I listen very intently, which is hugely important, and I'm able to deliver. And so I just really feel confident about, like, if I walk in there, I will hit what they need as long as they're communicating with me. And so I think just the confidence is probably the bottom line. It's just falling into that, you know, place where you just know the gig and you're going to give it 110% every time, but you're not going to force it. You know, you don't have to force it. It just comes naturally.
Absolutely. I love to hear that you just become more comfortable in your skin. And that can lead to my next question is that, you know, a lot of times the work you do can influence or affect who you are as a person. I think about Kevin Conroy, who has done Batman for multiple years. He said that Batman has helped him grow as a person to be more emotionally vulnerable due to his past trauma as a child. I remember he talked about that on the podcast with Michael Rosenboom, who did The Flash on the Justice League, which you were Captain Adam in. So my question to you is, how do you say voice acting has helped you grow as a person or has helped change your life in a way?
You know, I would say that it's helped me grow a thick skin because, you know, I mean, I've been fortunate to have a very nice career for sure, but that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't suffer disappointment. I mean, you audition for many things, and as any actor will tell you, that doesn't mean that you're not booking everything, you know. So you kind of grow accustomed to the notion of nothing is owed to you. You know, it's tough. I mean, it's a tough thing to sometimes, you know, accept. But like if you have a role, there will be times when there's something I do an audition, I'm like, yes, that's the best. There's no way anyone, whether it's a sound alike, could sound more like Owen Wilson than me. There's absolutely zero chance there will be anyone who could possibly sound more like Owen Wilson than me. And then I won't get it. And I'll be like, wait, what? But like, wow, that is really surprising to me. So you know, in all seriousness, that you learn how to roll with it, and you kind of accept it and move on. And so one of the tools that I had to learn early on really is do the auditions, move forward. if you get it, you get it. You'll hear. They'll tell you. You'll know. I mean, and sometimes it'll be months. I just got for this feature, which I'm going to be doing. It's I can't tell you what it is because I have to keep quiet. But yeah, exactly. But I did this audition months ago, and then my agent like sends me this thing. They're like, hey, they want to find when you're available, and I'm like, what is this again? Because I've done so many things in the meantime, and then they go, oh, they're like, oh yeah, no, I remember that, but it's just, you do such a quantity. So it's really being able to kind of move forward, which, is always good in life,
Absolutely. Because in life, there's always going to be things that don't go the way they're intended to or what you had planned. And it's really important to, remember to have that thick skin and just look at all that you've done. Like, I know there's probably more that you've bounce back. And
my favorite quote, actually, my favorite movie quote is Rocky, when he says, it ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And I'm like, yes, keep moving forward, man.
And it's just to add on to that, just always be grateful for the stuff you've done. Because I know there are tons of roles you probably wanted that you didn't get. But I mean, look at you, man. Like, you're Garron Paduk, amazing. You're the definitive Hawkeye. I don't care what none of y'all say. You're a Hawkeye.
Did you hear that, world? What do you think, world? Listen to him.
You've been Iron Man, which that's crazy. Like, you're honestly a legend in this industry. Like, you've done so many great and amazing roles.
Thank you.
And you're so talented. I mean, I really do mean that. And I don't just say that because I'm talking to you and you agree to this. Like, I've listened to the roles you've done. I've seen the work you put in. And I see the work ethic that you do, and you deserve all the roles you get. And I'm looking forward to this future talk about. Like, you really deserve it. And it's just always to remember to look at that positive, and when you go through those dark and negative periods, to just look at the light and brightness that you have been to in the past to help you go back to that light again. So
thank you, man. Those are very profound words, and I actually, now I will take that. Will add into the encyclopedic list in my voiceover career. I will take your words, remember them, and hold on to them. So you become a part of your own answer to your own question.
I love it. But now let's talk more about Hawkeye, because I love what you've done. So you brought like this cocky, cool attitude to Hawkeye that really perfectly fits him, that has really done well for the character. And you've been Hawkeye in Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes, multiple Marvel vs. Capcom video games, multiple Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3, and I'm sure there are probably other times you've done Hawkeye that you can't talk about, maybe. But
well, I'm just grateful that, even when I wasn't selected to move on to Avengers Assemble, which, again, I go back to, I think they just look, I mean, other than Fred, look, the one guy who survives all of these things, I mean, Fred is like a roach. Yes, Hulk. I mean, he's never going to disappear. He just survives all of these iterations, and rightfully so. There's no human being on the planet who can do what he does. I witnessed it, when I was Hawkeye, in that room watching him, and I'm like, is he human? Like, what? He's got elevator cables in his throat. What is that? What's happening over there? And he's just this unassuming guy, the sweetest guy, but he just brings up this primal rage and this noise and this emotion, and you're just like, that's it, man. That's the stuff. And so thank you for that. Yeah, with Hawkeye, I mean, what I always wanted to do, hopefully, and it's kind of what I do in my writing, I try to anyway, I always want to, I like having the cocky stuff and being funny, but I always want it to remain likable. I don't ever want it to be like, oh, that guy's just a jerk. You know what I mean? Because that's not fun. So you hope that you bring the humanity so that when you do have those moments, which they did in Avengers, where I went from that sort of cocky and wisecracking guy to like, I never miss, or whatever, just any of those statements where he's, there's some gravity. So that was what I liked about it. He had the ability to go from, kind of fun, funny, cocky, arrogant, whatever, to like he could button it up and kind of, bring the crew down to reality.
Absolutely. And there's so many scenes with Hawkeye. I remember I was looking at some clips just to briefly look over. I remember when he fought Falcon, and Falcon was like giving him the work and beat him and punched him in the stomach, and he fell, and he was like, and Falcon was like, "You missed," and he was like, "Did I?" And he turns, and there's an electric arrow in his wings, and it shocks him, and he falls to the floor. He's like shaking, and Hawkeye goes and grabs his arrow and goes to shoot, and then he talks to, I think it was Bruce and his wife, and he was like, "Well, thanks for helping me." He was out of power. He wasn't Hulk anymore because the Falcon was trying to kidnap him and take him away. So I just love moments like that. Or when the Avengers lost all of their powers and Hawkeye was like, "You guys need to go," and Cap was like, "We never won." And he was like, "Well, today we're trying new things," and he keeps just shooting the arrows. I love that scene.
That's the dose of reality. And I will tell you that from the very beginning, and I don't know if it was Chris Yost or if it was just, I don't know if it was a company edict, but one of the things that I was supposed to do, I think, or what they wanted that character to come in and do, was to be this sort of like reality check. You guys think, oh, I get it. You guys think you're all this and that. I'm just here to tell you you're not, but still like and then over the course of that first season, him just integrating into that group and more, not having to be that sort of loner outsider as much as he can be, but still delivering those salty doses of reality, yeah, man, it was really, really fun, and a character that for me kind of hit all of the sweet spots of what I like, and I mean, and the ability to do the action stuff, and you're sitting there making these, all of these. My dog just, I freaked him out. He's like, "What the hell?" He really did. He was like, "What?" He doesn't fall for that one anymore. I used to do the barks, and when he first got him as a puppy, I'd be like, and he'd be like, what the hell's going on? But all of those action things you get to do, you actually kind of get pulled in like you're doing an action movie. And it's like, yeah, man, I'm tough. I can jump across this 10-foot gap between buildings and fire an arrow, and you get really physical, which you have to, and that's weird. You're doing these movements to convey the action that they take to another level, of course. But
yeah, Hawkeye is a really cool character, and I wish, a personal thing I wish they would have done more is really do that with Hawkeye in the movies, because I really feel, even though they've done a good job with it, just the way your version of Hawkeye that you portray masterfully, like I said again, it's just like that reality guy who cracks the jokes and how the jokes fit and how, oh my gosh. And
that's so funny that you say that, because and it's weird for me as a Hawkeye. I don't want to critique Jeremy Renner at all. Like, I love what he did. But I think one of the reasons maybe that didn't happen in the features is because, that was Downey Jr. had already kind of filled that cocky, wisecracking spot. But you know what? In our Mightiest Heroes, I look back on it now, and that's the symphony they created, man. They were able to have that character, Iron Man, still be that cocky kind of fun guy, and then me in there too, and it never felt like, oh, that's doubling up. You know what I mean? It didn't feel redundant. So I don't know in the future if that's why they kind of pulled back on having Jeremy. They leaned more into the disaffected, the guy than they did with me. I was able to be a little more maybe playful, and still, get across the seriousness as well. But yeah.
Hopefully with the new show coming out this November, they'll do something different with Jeremy as Hawkeye. I'm excited for that one too. Looks very comic accurate. Let's rewind. Let's go back in time with Avengers, Mightiest Heroes. Were you a fan of the comic books at all?
I wasn't as big of a comic book person. It's so funny. I was such a fan of all of the movies. I mean, I remember when my brother took me to Superman, I must have spent the next year, anything I did that was like playing or whatever, I would have
Williams,
like that theme, that John Williams score. Yeah, so like if I was swimming and I was underwater, I was Superman swimming. And so and I, like I told you, it's weird, I was almost like a comic book geek of the TV and film stuff, because I watched that Spider-Man thing. I don't even know if like comic book fans back then of the Spider-Man would know what I was talking about, but I loved all of that. So I was sort of like an honorary, comic book guy. But I mean, I can't completely lay claim to that. And those guys, I mean, I can tell you this, when I got the role of Hawkeye, I went out and bought like, a ton of those and read those comics and got to know the character through that. I really wanted to do the research, and maybe that's what I hopefully brought, in the booth, was some of that knowledge that I gained from that. But yeah, no, I wasn't as big. I was a card collector, but I did cards of like, Star Wars and stuff,
How did Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes get on your radar? Did they have it under a code name, or was it just like open auditions, like Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, come if you want?
Right. It wasn't a code name to my recollection, but there is a funny story about it, and it's this. I went in to play Iron Man because my audition was for Iron Man. I did a little bit of a Robert Downey Jr. sort of thing. I sort of sound like him. I could do that sort of thing, whatever. Okay, fine. So I had that, and I think I did that in my audition. And they did want, I think I remember from the audition, they did want that to be kind of accurate to Downey Jr. They wanted, because Iron Man by that point was established as him. I think it was like 2 years after the film had come out. None of the other characters were really locked in to any on-screen stuff. So I went in for Iron Man. I did my thing. Okay, everybody just get it. And then after I did the audition, the director, Jamie, kind of looked at the producer, whose name I can't remember, and they kind of went, I saw him behind the glass kind of talking, what do you think this? And I was like, what are they doing? Like, what? And Jamie came back on, and he's like, would you mind auditioning for another part? And I was like, no. Now in my mind, I was, again, remember what I said about like kind of like confidence and just, I mean, it's not scary, but you're nervous because you have the sides for the other thing. And now all of a sudden you're going to get this new material and you're going to be like, what? So I was like, sure. But then I didn't know what they'd hand me, and they handed me Hawkeye. And I remember the phrase that got me the part. It was, there was a whole scene, obviously, but there was this thing where it was like, tick, tick, boom. And literally, I knew, because I kind of looked over, and they were like, oh, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to get this. But of course, as I said to you, you never just, until you get it, you don't have it. But that's what happened. I was originally in there for Iron Man, but they just, something in what I did for Iron Man that sparked them for Hawkeye. They were like, and it's funny because I told you, Iron Man in the films was the kind of the cocky, wisecracking guy. And so they were like, oh, he's cocky and wisecracking, but he also seems to have maybe this edge. And then tick, tick, boom was the edge. And that got me the gig. Yeah. And I was over the moon about it. I was like, I love this. This is amazing, full circle. I mean, my childhood, the Marvel stuff, and now coming back and getting to perform as one of those characters was amazing.
That tick, tick, boom, I was getting goosebumps. I can still feel them. That was so cool.
It was a real moment, man. It kind of defined where they were going with this guy. It's kind of the perfect alchemy of it's darkly humorous, it's badass, and it's just like, calm, cool, and collected. So yeah, that was cool.
Now that you're Hawkeye, you're getting to work with all these other people. Brian Bloom is Captain America. Vanessa Marshall is Black Widow. Fred, of course, is Hulk. What was the energy like in the room with everyone, not just the voice actors, but the engineers, the writers, the producers? How would you describe that environment?
It was such a lovely, room. everybody was warm and supportive. You didn't feel, sometimes, not that much, but sometimes you'll get in the room maybe with certain people, groups, and you can start to feel a little bit of maybe rivalry, or sometimes you just get a little bit of that, like, you just ego. You just got a little ego, and there's some ego floating around. And I can tell you unequivocally, there was no ego in that room. I mean, you know, Fred as Hulk, I mean, this guy defined the role. If anybody in that room could have been arrogant, and nope. Brian Bloom, who I got to know, and really we palled around, you know, just one of the nicest, most down-to-earth guys. Of course, we already talked about Rick. One of the things I always try to do in a room, and even when I'm doing solo sessions, is, you know, between takes, in the downtime, I try to keep the room, kind of keep energy going, and I'm kind of that guy. And I you know, it just kind of naturally happens because I'm a cut up. And so in that room, what I was the guy who brought some voices that they had never heard people do before. So I was doing Sam Elliott, and the Sam Elliott impression became a mascot that everyone else started doing, and Rick would do his version, you know that. And what's really funny is, I'll just tell you this very quickly, is that Rick loved my Sam Elliott impression. Rick, years later, ended up working at the Malibu Playhouse, and Sam Elliott had a show that was going to go up. It was a charity event, one time only. It was a play called Love Letters, who he was going to do with his wife. And Rick said, "You got to go, because I want you to meet Sam, and I want you to do that impression for him." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, Rick. This seems like a bad idea." He said, you know, doing an impression to somebody, especially Sam, he's an icon, and you know, he's a nice guy, but I don't know that he's like the most sort of humorous and whatever. Anyway, we go to the thing. My wife's with me, and Rick is like doing everything. He's like juggling all kinds of jobs. He's like the welcome wagon. He's handing out hors d'oeuvres, believe it or not. I mean, it was, you know, and he comes up to me with the tray and he goes, "You're still going to do it, right?" And I'm like, "Rick, I don't think I should do this." And he's like, No, you got to do it. I'm telling you, I've already set it up. I was like, he kind of, I don't know if he'd set it up, but he said, he'll like it. So at the end of the show, we line up. I go up to him, and he's like, "Hey." and I'm like, "Hey, Sam." And he goes, you know, I go, "Listen, you know, Rick told me that you guys kind of we're going to have like a voiceover off, because Sam knew Rick did voiceover, and Rick, like Sam, has a low voice. And so he was kind of like, "Yeah, you and I should have a, you know, contest with the pipes." So I went into his voice and said, "I thought maybe I'd join in." And he instantly goes, "All right, well, nice to meet you." He walked off. It was hilarious. And my wife and I were just standing there dumbfounded, and he just walks off. And I told Rick, I go, later on, I go, "Dude, I told you this wasn't a good idea." And I don't think it was maybe he didn't even know. Maybe it was so obscure he didn't understand. Or maybe he just thought it was not a good impression. And he was like, "You know what? I don't." He just walked away. All right, well.
I'm so sorry. Oh my God. I'm getting secondhand. Oh my God. I could have met. I would have been like, "What did Rick say? What did Rick say?"
I mean, you know, he was like, "I don't know what happened, man. I don't know." And I was like, "Well, what happened was exactly what I thought would probably happen, and it did. And so whatever, but you know, I did it. So, and a lot of people do that. A lot of people wouldn't be, maybe I should say, brave enough to do it, but I was. And it wasn't disrespectful. I was just trying to have some fun, and he didn't have fun."
That is crazy, but you know, you guys are so. It's so cool hearing you guys like have stories with one another, or you meeting friend and being friends with him. You must have met some amazing voice actors along the way. I mean, Nolan North was a part of the cast. Roger Craig Smith, I've spoken to, one of the nicest around. Steve Bloom was a part of that. Another great one. He was Wolverine, and that must have been such a great experience to get that. And what is your favorite moment voicing Hawkeye in Avengers or Mightiest that you can remember?
There was an episode. You're going to remember this better than I. But there was an episode. We're sitting up above the action on like almost like a walkway or something, and we're just watching what's going on, and it's like we're just observers, and we have this moment of recognition where we just both start laughing together. It was so pure. Like I wish I could remember the exact scenario. I just know we were up above, we were looking down, we were watching this scene going on, almost like, look at those fools, look at those foolish little people. And it was really kind of solidified their friendship to me, you know, and it was just a pure moment for Fred and I too. It was like our friendship had gotten to that point. And just to have that moment of like, you know, laughing like that, and me laughing, it felt like, okay, we've arrived at our journey destination here. This is where we're supposed to be, you know. And I just always loved calling him Green. Anytime they wrote, you know, all right, Green, you know, if you don't get out of my way, this is gonna go down like this. You know, it was always like these sort of, and I just loved that he would be like, are you kidding me? You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta be joking. And that's what I loved also, was that Hawkeye wasn't afraid of him. You know?
Not at all. Yeah.
You know, and that was really cool, because it's like, you know, as you know, of all the characters, he's the one that has the least sort of, you know, ingrained natural superhero juice. And so he was just that, you know, he's an incredibly skilled acrobat and marksman. And he has an amazing array of weaponry, but it was just pure, unadulterated, like, confidence. Like, you're not gonna intimidate me, and I'm gonna set the tone. And then that kind of led to the moment where we had the levity, because he respected that. You know, I think I got Hulk's respect, and he liked that. You know, so that was cool.
The scene I think about and remember is when Hulk was like in the Hulk form, and Hawkeye was looking for Bruce Banner because he needed him, and Hawkeye was like, "Yeah,
go ahead."
Okay, I'm glad you remember. And he was like, "Hey, I need Banner." Hulk was like, "No, he's not here. Go away or whatever." And Hawkeye was like, "Listen here, you're gonna do what I say." I can't remember the line exactly, but it was like, "You're gonna do what I say. There's gonna be an issue." And Hulk turns and busts out laughing and turns.
Yes, that's what I was kind of doing just now. Is like when he went, you know, it's like, I totally remember that. Yes, absolutely. And it was cool that, you know, they had another actor playing Bruce. It was I forget his name. He was like, he had been on like Mad Men maybe, or some other show. He was really a nice guy, but it was just so interesting, you know, to have him playing the you know, the non-Hulky version, and then Fred doing his thing.
Now I know when the show was announced to have been canceled, did you know that it was going to get canceled, or was it a surprise to you?
It was a surprise. It was a real, that was hard, because I just felt, like Chris said, I felt there were so many more stories to be told. You know, I was like, man, there's so much more to do. We've really been gelling as a unit, and we are living in these characters. Yeah, it was a shock, to be honest.
And I mean, like I said in the beginning, he had up to 5 seasons planned. You guys were going to be very involved with the X-Men, and there are a lot of characters on that show that I know because of that. Adam Warlock, I had no idea who that was. The Guardians of the Galaxy. Who knew of the Guardians of the Galaxy before the movie? Barely anybody. But that shows the reason I know who Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon and Groot is, and just the mastery that the guy who played Master Chief for all these years also did Star-Lord's voice on that show.
Yeah.
Did so well with Star-Lord. Groot was awesome. Did Gamora, like, I didn't know who Graviton was that Fred played in the first episode, the guy who broke from the prison. That's an actual comic book character. I had no idea, but that was my first time knowing the character. Or Crimson Dynamo that you, of course, played. I didn't know who that was until I heard you do your awesome job.
Yes, I always tried to separate him and Colossus because they would do different sort of voices and sort of thing.
Yeah, but they're both Russian from that area.
Yeah, I know. I want to make sure that, like, try anyway. Whatever. Hopefully, people. Hey, that just sounds like that. I try to always think about that. I don't want people to, like I played. I mean, they're different, but like, Deadshot and Hawkeye, sort of like in this similar vein. But Deadshot was humorless. I mean, dead serious. And so when I was doing him, I just kept it right on the, down the path. That one, that whole series was so much fun, So
if they were to bring back the show, is there anything you would like to see them do? Or maybe
if they were to bring back Earth's Mightiest Heroes?
Yes.
Yeah, bring back me. That's the first thing. And then everything else beyond that is like, yeah, whatever you want to do. If they brought it back, I'd want to go back to what Chris was saying and going deeper into the universe, having the crossover episodes like we did. We had that one. We had some crossover stuff. I actually did Star-Lord. I think was it on Hulk Smash?
Yeah, Hulk and the Agents of Smash, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah. And that was kind of in between. So I didn't know, like, when they did Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't know which way they were going to go with the Star-Lord, and obviously they went with a different direction. But yeah, I would love for them to just have continued in the way they were going.
Absolutely, I'm completely with you right there. Everything that they were building, like I said, me knowing about characters that I didn't know before. I'm a huge Inhumans fan. The Fantastic Four, if I could like point my camera. Fantastic Four was on that show. I love the Fantastic Four.
Big Yancey Street, whatever.
It's so cool that you could do that. D. Bradley Baker was Mr. Fantastic. David Bolt was the Thing, so on and so forth. And just seeing all those characters. That Red Hulk, I didn't know what a Red Hulk was until that show with General Thunderbolt Ross, and just everything that they were doing. I honestly was so excited for. And that show,
one of season 2. I remember that one. That was fun too.
Yeah,
that was awesome. Yeah, that was just so like, I mean, that's when they were. I think that's really when they were embracing. They ended up doing, like in the Avengers feature film series, which is just bringing out the humanity, them just hanging out at the house,
Absolutely, man. And that show will always live in my heart. And I really hope they do bring it back. You hear shows coming back like Young Justice came back, the Clone Wars came back. I honestly feel like there's so many shows with so much potential that sadly get canceled or misplaced. Spectacular Spider-Man is one I think of. That got canceled, and there was so much story there. That show literally ended on a cliffhanger. It ended on a cliffhanger. There's so much they could have done with these stories that it was unfortunately ruined by the movie franchise. I don't want to say ruined like the movies are bad or anything, but in a way, due to the movies, they had to be
direction. That movie again. I'm not a Marvel executive, but I think it's pretty obvious that and it's a business, and so in terms of business, I get it, because it's like they call it synergy, everything kind of lining up, and I think maybe it would have at that time. Now they've established. I mean, like with WandaVision, you see that they have these offshoots that are sort of interesting deviation. So maybe now they would maybe be more open to it. But at the time, it felt like they were kind of streamlining everything under a certain banner. And little pun there. They were trying to line things up. And so our show probably maybe was a little too attached. I don't know that our show was canceled because of ratings. I mean, maybe that's it. I have no idea whether we were, a ratings success. I know we were a hardcore fan favorite. I knew that because I'd see things online, and, it was just very clear. So
there's so many shows that I love from my childhood. I think were you on this Wolverine and the X-Men? I think you were on.
No, I don't think I was on that. No. Mm-mm.
Okay, no. Well, that was another show that got canned after one season.
I was on Justice League Unlimited, where I played, Captain Atom, sorry, Superman, not gonna happen. Whatever it was, not today. Again, just sort of like a badass, but just with a Texas draw. And that was, I love that show too. I love that show.
There's so many good shows that you've been a part of. But just before we get out of the Hawkeye section of this conversation, what has been your favorite moment of voicing Hawkeye besides Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes?
My favorite moment voicing Hawkeye besides in that cartoon?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's a big question. I mean, I've done so many of the video games that I couldn't even like pick out one particular moment. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sorry, I don't really have a great answer for that.
Oh no, you're fine. Like literally, if you go to your IMDb or behind the voice actor, you see you've been Hawkeye in multiple things. Like I said, Marvel Heroes, majority of the Marvel versus Capcom video games, Ultimate Alliance 3. You've probably done them for more things that are coming down the pipeline, which I'm excited to hear. Need more of you as my boy Hawkeye. I really do. And there's no disrespect to anyone who's done it. Like Troy Baker, I looked who's done Hawkeye the most out of all voice actors. You are the close second to him. You just bring so much to that character that I love. Maybe it's my blind nostalgia, but honestly, you just bring so much to that character of Hawkeye. Genuinely, the charisma, this slide. I love that. I love it so much. And you've done such a great job.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Did you get a chance to audition for Hawkeye's Avengers in Avengers Assemble, or did you not even know that show was coming?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember on that one if that was. I don't think I did. I think they made a decision, and so it was I don't even think the audition. I think maybe as a courtesy they did, but they cast Troy. They wanted to go a different direction, and I think if I had and I don't know that my version. I mean, look at the show. I don't know that my version would have fit on that show. I really don't. I did play. I think I played Star-Lord on that show once or twice. I think I came on with my Star-Lord, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And they just had a different way they were going to go, and I think it would have been like, trying to squeeze into a shoe that's a little too small. I think it would have been uncomfortable. Just that character would have been out of place.
Yeah. Have you gotten to meet Troy Baker?
Oh yeah, for sure. We worked together on multiple things. He was on. He played the General.
Troy was on Avengers Earth's Mightiest.
He didn't play the Shield agent. He played Q. It starts with a Q, right? Quartermain, is that what it was?
Quasar?
On Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Troy played. He didn't play General Ross. That was Keith Ferguson. But he was on for like 4 episodes. He had kind of like an extended guest appearance, And then I worked on Shadows of Mordor because I was an orc.
Oh yeah, okay. That's cool that you've gotten to meet. Have you guys talked about the Hawkeye role at all when you guys meet, or have you been like, "Oh, I'm the Hawkeye"?
He came up to me, I think, when I came on to do Star-Lord, and he said, "Hey man, I hope you're, I don't even remember." And I was like, "No, man, what are you talking about? Like, this is how it is. This is our business. You get, people that roles get. I mean, and I wasn't the only one that got replaced. I mean, everybody did except for Fred. And so I was, I just said that's the way it goes, and peace be with you, good luck. And no, I don't. There's no ill will at all. None.
That's good. And I'm glad you guys have a good rapport. But now to go into another one of my favorite roles of yours. Freaking Deadshot. Deadshot is one of the coolest characters around. You've been him in Arkham City and Arkham Origins. And you've just been Deadshot in the Arkham franchise in general. And I love your take on the character of Deadshot. For people who don't know who Deadshot is, could you give them a quick summary?
His name is Fred Lawson, I believe.
Floyd Lawton.
Floyd. I always mix up Floyd and Fred. For me on that character, I focused mainly on, he was a cold soul. He was just cold. And he had a singular mission, and he wasn't going to be stopped. So there was an element under that was maybe, you know, there was maybe a little bit of a connection between Hawkeye, but that's where it stopped in terms of the determination, you know, and the confidence in his shot. You know, they both sort of like had that thing of like, I don't miss, I never miss, you know. But the difference is with Deadshot, you know, he wasn't a hero. He was a villain. And I always remember the fight that I had with him. I think it was in Origins against, you know, him and Batman really fought it out there. And I was like, this guy's not going to stop. He's just like, just cold-blooded. That's what I remember. I never played a cold-blooded character like that. Just so, and it wasn't mechanical. It wasn't like, you know, Terminator-esque, but it was just purely one mission, one shot to kill a mercenary with no desire to be bogged down by emotion.
What is a memorable moment you have with Deadshot, and what is your favorite time doing him? Like, favorite game? Did you enjoy him in Arkham City or Arkham Origins?
I really liked that. There was a scene. There was a scene, and I think it was like, I think it was Origins was the one with Roger as Batman, I believe.
That's the one.
Yeah. And I remember there was this haunting, I can't tell you the lines I did, but I remember there was this haunting sort of off-camera voice thing where I don't know if you remember that, where I'm just taunting him, and it was relentless, and it was kind of spooky and weird, and it was like, I remember saying like, things like, there he is, the legendary Bat. It was just very dismissive, and it was just, like I felt like I was hunting him, and I really liked what they did with that, and I recorded that. I remember that was at, it was on the Warner Brothers lot. And I don't know how many voice actors have told you, but the Warner Brothers has an underground recording facility. You go down. I mean, it's not like a, nuclear thing, like you're going, and I really distinctly remember the vibe of being in that room for some reason. And I don't always remember the exact feel, but I mean, I think it stands out because what I was doing with that and what they had me doing with that character was like, it was dark. And like I said, I don't think that I'd ever played someone in that, kind of, it had a reality to it that was a little creepier than just like playing a bad guy in like Avenger, even though Avengers was like, definitely had its universe and its world. And, yeah, it was really, it was a little icky when I played that guy, a little icky. You kind of wipe your off after the studio because you're like, I just killed someone, shot him in the head.
Yeah, Deadshot is a really cool character, and I love the side missions that they had. He was just so in for the kill, like, I'm gonna get you, and he's always angry at Batman. Such a cool character.
Yeah.
Now, recently this year, it has been announced Suicide Kills the Justice League is coming out on, I think, all platforms next year. Of course, Deadshot is in it, and this game, according to multiple sources and executives that work on the game, this is a part of the Arkham universe. And of course, you played Deadshot in the Arkham universe. This Deadshot is very different. Of course, a different skin tone and a different voice actor. Now, there's a post where Deadshot has had that version, the Suicide Kills the Justice League Deadshot, had a sign that said, I'm the real Floyd Lawton. Fans have been theorizing that he killed your version of the Deadshot character and has taken over the mantle. I have two questions for you about the game. One, did they talk to you about this game, and are you in the game? And B, what are your thoughts on all the theories about what happened to your version of the character?
I don't want to really speak to the first part because I'm not, I don't know how out and out it is in the public sphere. And I just sort of stay away from projects that I'm not certain about because again, you've interviewed a lot of VO actors. You can overstep some boundaries when you get into these things. So I don't really want to talk about that. But I think here's what I'll say. With a guy like Deadshot, it's very much like the mafia world. There's always someone over your shoulder. You can never be comfortable. And so it doesn't surprise me that he would get whacked, as it were, because as bad as you might think you are, there's always somebody else who wants to take the mantle. And so that's what that strikes me as, is just, look, I don't know the particulars, but that's an interesting, storyline for sure. Yeah.
I'd honestly love to see you come back and just do your thing, or maybe they have a flashback scene to where you're fighting off and you eventually do end up losing. But I don't know. I mean, I know they're obviously trying to go into with Deadshot, they're trying to coin off of the success of Will Smith in the 2016 version of the movie with Deadshot and such, and which I'm cool with and okay. I understand that they want to do that for a reason, but I don't know, man. I really would have loved to have seen you be on the front covers as the character and get more time, because with Deadshot, you only did like side missions. He was never like really the main villain of the game. And
correct.
We beat you up from time to time as Deadshot, and you weren't really present. But with this game, you would have been the main focus, which bums me out. But like you said, this is how the VO industry works. I mean, sometimes the characters, and then one day you're not. You're someone else, and that's just how it is, unfortunately. Even though if it was I had it, you'd be Deadshot in almost everything. So
as you develop into your career, the way you can make these things happen is you keep working on your writing. You graduate up, and then in 5-6 years, you'll be an executive at Marvel or DC, and you'll just hand the plate to me, man. You'll be like, what do you want to do? I'm the king. I grant you your wish.
I'll come back to this interview and be like, hey, we're going to make a Deadshot animated short. Well, I want you to do
there
that.
You
go. Most definitely. Now I want to go into Gears of War as Garron Paduk.
Okay.
For the people who don't know Garron Paduk, how would you describe that character? Because I'm fairly new to the Gears of War franchise myself.
Well, Garron Paduk is a veteran of he's a Groznian veteran of the Groznian battles. And, he's really grizzled. He's seen the cogs. He's seen death and destruction. Basically, I will tell you that I think the game makers. By the way, this is written by a guy named Tom Bissell, who's a great writer, and he came from the world of like journalism and books and things like that. If you've ever seen the movie The Room, which was James Franco.
Oh, The Room, yeah.
Yeah, he was. I think he was involved in that. I think he wrote that he wrote the book, I think, that they based that off of. Anyway, great writing, and really the origins in some ways of that character, for me anyway, was the Bosnian War, the Croats and the Serbs in the 90s, and it was very much this sort of Eastern European thing, and everybody's like, Baird, I've seen it all, And so again, it was another character where he was a bit of a misfit. He was an anti-establishment kind of guy, and when he went along with Baird and the crew, it was more. It always felt like he was the guy that was bringing years of battle-hardened experience and a little bit of that Hawkeye reality check, but yeah, I love that character. It was so fun. It was just, again, the recording that I did that solo, but every time I went in the booth for that, it was like putting on a glove. Even if there were years in between, you're just putting on a glove. I knew the guy, I knew what it was about, and yeah. And I like what they do. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say is that he appeared in Gears of War Judgment in 2013, I believe, and he didn't come back until Gears 5. So how did it feel?
Yeah, that was great. No, I loved that they brought him back. I was obviously disappointed, you know, in the in between game that I wasn't part of that. And I will tell you, in a weird way, that was probably one of the ones that disappointed me, maybe even more than the Hawkeye stuff, just because I had really settled into that character, and I really felt, since we'd only done one game, I felt there was a lot more to learn about him. And you know, and then the fact that they in the final iteration, they made him, you know, it was advanced into the future, so he was older, and that was fun because I got to bring a little more age and make him, you know, I just sort of added a few years. But that was fun to bring an element of him, you know, reminiscing, like with Baird and whatever, having memories now of the times from the game that I did before. You know, it was interesting angle. Yeah.
Did you have to re-audition, or did they just call you back in to do it?
Yeah, they just called me back in. They couldn't find someone else for that. No way.
Absolutely, man. Wouldn't have been any other way. Colossus, Crimson Dynamo, Garron, Paduk are all people that you have played that have sort of this Russian accent about them. Which
Russian,
is yeah, Eastern European more specifically. Who is your favorite character to do that accent for? And does that dialect come easy to you?
Yeah, yes, dialect comes very easy for me, not a problem. I mean, Garron Paduk, and I'd have to even listen to like the clips myself to find what I did slightly differently, hopefully. You know, admittedly, because they are Russian, and I think with Crimson Dynamo, I made him more big like this. You know, this is more big voice and kind of big. Whereas with Garron Paduk, I pulled him back here. You know, he's just more of a laid back. I don't have to do this. You know, Bear, what is the matter with you? So there was a more sort of laid back thing. So I liked that. I like Garron. Yeah, he's always going to be my favorite Slavic guy.
That's awesome. Now we're going to transition to the fun part of my interviews called Weird and Wacky. It's a 1-minute segment where you have 1 minute to answer a series of random, weird, and wacky questions. No one has beaten the record of 15 questions, although the current championship title holder is Simon Norfleet with a record of 14 questions answered in 1 minute. Do you think you can beat him?
I don't think I could possibly beat that.
If you can beat 12 questions, you will beat most of the voice actors' averages.
Okay.
All right.
This is like the SATs, so if that's any indication, I don't have high expectations of myself.
I hate the SATs so much. My goodness, I hated taking those. All right, I'm about to start the timer in 3, 2, 1. Longest time period without taking a shower.
5 days.
Favorite food?
Tacos.
Favorite candy bar?
Score.
Dumbest thing you did as a kid?
Open house with a girlfriend, got caught. Police almost arrested me.
Favorite activity?
Hanging with my family.
Do you like the outdoors?
Love it.
Favorite restaurant?
Boa.
Would you rather be bitten by a snake or stung by bees?
Bees.
Worst smell you've ever smelled?
My dog's breath.
Food you almost threw up after eating?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Oh, bad shrimp.
And time.
Like,
Well,
that was not a lot.
Yes, fortunately that was around 9 questions, and but you did better. But don't worry when I bring you on next.
You caught me with the food. You caught me with the food, and then you asked me the dumb thing I did as a kid, and I was a teenager, and I was way too long of an answer, and I was, before that, I felt like I was clicking along, and then that one, but it was the first thing that came to my head because it was really dumb.
Yeah.
My final question to you is, what is your current message to the world during these current times that we live in? Obviously, we're living in a global pandemic still. Laws are being changed. Things are happening all over the world. What would you say to people who are down and in the need of hope?
I love this question. And I would say that it is difficult. It's hard sometimes to not feel hopeless. For myself, what I do, I get active. I get involved. The Georgia election for John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. I'm just being straight up. I don't want to get all political here, but nonetheless, everybody on whatever side of the aisle you're on, get involved, pay attention. Don't just sit there and be hopeless. I got involved. I did some voiceover stuff actually in the last campaign for people, and think of ways that you yourself can create something. What can you make that is truly from your soul and your heart, and how can you put that out into the world in a positive way? We need more positivity. Try every day, honestly, just try every day to just do something positive. It's the most you can really do. You can't control other things. It's like whatever's happening right now, like in our country with sort of crazy things going on, and in the greater world, you can only individually do something positive every day. Take a step. That's it. And don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Hawkeye never loses hope, even though he seems like he's sort of I guess a grouch or whatever you want to call it. Underneath all that, that's what I hope to bring to it, was there was always hope. There was always a belief that we could change things and make things better and get out of a situation. And so that's what you need to do.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I'm really big on spreading positivity and just letting people know that you care, especially during times like this where, family are catching diseases, getting sick, some are dying, some are just in terrible conditions, and you never know what someone's truly going through. You really don't. And just that little bit of kindness of saying, hey, I love you, I care about you, yo, how you doing? Or sending them like a funny video, like a funny photo can go like such a long way.
You never know what you do. I mean, you just never know what you do and what you put out in the world and how it impacts people. And, a great example is this, look, I do these things, and I'm not like the biggest sort of Comic-Con person. I don't do a lot of that stuff. I when I have done it, I've liked it. But hearing like what you're saying and seeing there are people are coming here and checking out what we're doing, that's a great feeling. It means that what I put out there, it resonated. I always say this, little ripples make big waves, and big waves can change the world. So put a little ripple out there every day, and you never know how it's going to turn into a wave.
Absolutely. Chris, is there anything you want to promote before we head off?
Anything I want to promote? Let me see. Well, I can't talk about that feature. I probably can't talk about the video game I'm doing.
These NDAs, man.
Talk about, man. It's like I will. I'll send you a DM and let you know when something's coming out, and they let me talk about it. But just keep an ear out.
Thank you guys so much for joining. Make sure to follow Chris, follow me, and I hope to see you guys on my next interview. Peace out.
Bye bye.